David Pagnotta, not Yoda from Star Wars, my mistake, joins us. And we've had him on before, and he's been amazing. It's an error on the host. It's a blue line turnover. Great to have you on the show.
All good. Thanks for having me.
So, Brandon Carlo, the Bruins signed him to a 6-year extension. Are they making any headway with Taylor Hall or David Krejci?
Yeah, those are next in line for the Boston Bruins. And you know, Boston is certainly hoping that they can make that happen. There has been some conversations on both fronts trying to get this done. Now, my suspicion is this will happen, if it does happen, after the expansion draft, after the trade or the waiver freeze, lifts on the 22nd. But Taylor Hall and David Krejci are two guys that gelled well together since Hall came to Boston. They like the chemistry. They like the fact that they have a secondary unit that can provide significant offense. They gelled well. You got a guy on the right side, whether it's I would assume it would probably be Craig Smith sticking around on that line. So they want to keep that going. There are teams that are waiting in the wings to see if these guys do not sign and hit the free agent market on the 28th, that they're waiting to pursue them. But Boston is trying to make this happen. I've been told that there's been some headway on both fronts, and the likelihood of those two sticking around in Boston has improved recently.
Interesting. Bruins fans intrigued by that news. Shifting to Music City, Nashville. What are you hearing about the future of Matt Duchene and Ryan Johansen there?
Yeah, well, they're available. They're up for grabs, and both of these guys have $8 million cap hits. They're both centers, and they're looking, the Predators are, or they're looking to see what the market will bear for them from a trade perspective. They've had conversations with Seattle about both of these guys, either trading them to the Kraken or making them available in the expansion draft. And they've also had conversations with other clubs. Duchene's got one extra year on his deal above Johansen. I believe it's 4 and 3, respectively. But again, the $8 million cap hit for both of these players has been a caveat in trying to make moves in the past. The conversations are ongoing right now. I think it might be a little bit difficult to see a deal involving either of these two guys before the expansion draft. But, we'll see. David Poile's working the lines to see what he can kind of MacGyver his way into making a move here. But we'll see in short order if something does happen before the roster freeze kicks in on the 17th.
Great MacGyver reference. So proud of you, David. And David Poile.
That was for you, by the way.
I appreciate it. No one has been a manager for more games than anyone but him. David Poile, all-time #1. Zach Hyman getting permission to talk to other teams. It seems like he's a guy who would draw interest from other clubs. Is that what you're finding?
Oh, he's drawn a ton of interest today alone now that they've been able to have conversations with other clubs ahead of the 28th. Now, the opportunity here is to perhaps get an 8-year extension done before the 28th. The Leafs make that signing and then trade him off. So your sign and trade situation. But there are multiple teams, several teams, that have expressed significant interest in Zach Hyman. You're talking about Seattle being one of them, but also Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, Boston, Detroit. There are clubs that are looking around to see, in Boston, kind of covering their bases if they don't get Hall done. But this is a player that's generated a ton of interest already, and that will continue. Now, from Toronto's perspective, they'd like to keep him, but he's just priced himself out of that market. He's looking for something in between $5 to $6 million, probably closer to the 6 range. That's not something that's going to happen from Toronto's perspective at this stage. So they're trying to see what deals they can make elsewhere, and if they can agree on something, at the very least, in a sign and trade, the Leafs can get some type of asset in return.
Timely headshot, too. He looks the way you'd think he'd look, smiling, understanding that he has priced himself out. He's earned big numbers. Congratulations to him. Let's head to the desert. What are you hearing about the Yotes and their offseason activity?
Yeah, they're going to be busy by all accounts. I mean, we obviously know about Oliver Ekman-Larsson looking around or being able to expand his list of teams that he's willing to move to, but he's not the only one. Darcy Kemper is very much available. I would be surprised if he has not dealt at some point this offseason. Phil Kessel as well. Kessel's an interesting one. He got a $5 million bonus already paid out on the first, $1 million in salary left for him in his final year of his deal. So the cap hit's still 6.8, but the actual money that's now owed to him is just $1 million. And then you've got Connor Garland, a restricted free agent, Christian Dvorak, and Clayton Keller also generating interest and discussion around the league. There's interest in both of these guys from Keller and Dvorak's perspective. Minnesota's certainly tied to him, but teams that are looking for help up the middle looking at Dvorak as an option other than, going to Nashville for a higher price of a Duchene or Johansen at $8 million. So Arizona's going to be very busy. Bill Armstrong, their GM, is certainly having a lot of conversations. I suspect we'll see some movement out of the desert pretty quickly here.
Go ahead.
And I almost forgot something I have to mention. There have been some discussions, my understanding, with Seattle with respect to Oliver Ekman-Larsson. So I'm not sure to this stage how far they've gotten, but there's been some type of discussion from that regard. And as mentioned, he is willing to expand his list of teams that he's willing to move to. I think Seattle might be an attractive option if they can make it work.
We will keep an eye on that. Shea Weber, it feels like I'm committing treason here, but I admire the guy so much as a hockey player, as a competitor, warrior, battler, for years and years and years. What impact might his absence have on Montreal's cap and their activity on the trade market?
It opens things up for them, Tony. I mean, now it gives them a totally different opportunity in terms of how they're going to pursue their offseason with respect to bolstering their lineup, making sure that they're going to remain in contender status going into next season. Now, this frees up almost $7.5 million from a cap or over $7.5 million, from a cap perspective, if he's done for the full season. Now, there's some reports that his career in general, from a playing perspective, might be in jeopardy overall, and that changes the dynamic for Montreal. And it also, you look at what happened after the playoffs, after they exited from the Stanley Cup final, the players consoling him. It makes a little bit more sense now, knowing that this might potentially be the end of the road for him. But it gives Montreal a significant amount of options now in terms of cap space to play with. He's a right shot defenseman. He's got a deadly shot. He's somebody that they're going to certainly look to replace if they can. Whether this puts them in the market for a Dougie Hamilton or Seth Jones from a trade perspective on Jones, Hamilton probably more so on free agency, we'll find that out probably in short order. But it gives Montreal and Marc Bergevin a whole different fleet of options now to pursue when they try to restack this lineup for next season.
David Pagnotta, you always come with big-time information. Thanks so much for joining us.
You got it. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure.